Life and Adventures of Jack Engle, an Auto-Biography, in which the reader will find some familiar characters, by Walt Whitman. Read by Frank Blissett. Chapter 8. Inez, she never went by any other name except in legal documents when the term, a Spanish dancing girl, was added. Inez belonged to that class of professional people, including a majority of those whose parents earn their living by serving the public and depending on the latter's favor, who are prematurely developed. These unfortunates have the experience of men and women while yet in early youth. Under feverish stimulants they come forward like hothouse plants, and sometimes their growth is unwholesome and as fragile. With Inez, however, there was the saving fact of a strong vein of native common sense. She afterward told me, when we became more intimate, that the first man she really loved, and she loved in the morning of her life, taught her the most profitable lesson she had ever learned. He was treacherous, she was devoted and confiding. And that treachery it was that, with the scorching mark of a hot iron burnt on her heart, the precept, caution, the great need that is so long coming to young souls, and that, when it comes, puts an end forever to the freshest joys and the thoughtless abandon of their lives. And yet it is so useful in this wicked world, and we cannot get along without it. And so, as the dose must be taken, the sooner the wry face is past and the qualms gone, the better. "Oh," said the frank-hearted girl, "I have not traveled alone through so many lands. I have not gained my bread among shows and coarse people-making journeys, and taken up with any kind of accommodation, subject to all sorts of proposals, and all variations of applause, indifference, and scorn. I have not gone through these, and much more, for nothing. You have candidly asked me my own opinion of myself. I will be as candid with you. I know that I am not good, but I feel also that I never have been, and am not, abandoned enough to be unworthy the sympathy of those who are good. I am conscious of having committed no spiteful meanness. I wound or deceive no one who trusts in me. I have never wronged a human being. I have not thought myself better than the degraded and lost ones, but rather pity and relieve them." She stopped abruptly and looked at us with her sharp, black eyes. "But am I not making myself ridiculous?" she added. On the contrary, I felt a real admiration for this independent and, in some respects, unfortunate girl, and the evident truth which impelled her to talk of her character in that way impressed my feelings strongly. But, whether jealousy or not, something put the thought in my head at this moment, could this woman love such a fop as Smith? She might have got along with Smith, because that is a manly acceptance of one's destiny and a plump defiance of the world. But Smith was a sort of sneaking and cowardly evasion, a consciousness of something wrong, and a timid desire to dust people's eyes about it. I answered nothing to the question of Inez, and Smith gave his eternal, No, indeed." We had coffee and some biscuits. It was delightful coffee made by Inez herself in, as she told us, the Spanish fashion. A stout, rosy Irish woman, of all people in the world, Mrs. Nancy Fox, wife of Barney Fox, and mother of 7 little foxes, served us these refreshments. Or rather, she appeared to serve us. But Inez was in such good spirits and so nimble and graceful that she really did everything. Barney and Nancy and the little children lived in a rear building on the same premises, and the services of the tidy, industrious Irish woman were quite invaluable to Inez, who had formed an attachment to her, and requited her liberally. Barney followed the honorable business of hod-carrying, and at a pinch even took a place under government as a street sweeper. Barney was up to snuff too, as will be shown by and by. And now, when I look back upon it, there have been stupider evenings past than the one which was talked and sipped away by us in that comfortable little parlor. There we were, in easy chairs encompassing a round table in the middle of the room, a fine astral lamp shedding a soft light over everything, the cheerful fire, for it was a chilly evening, in the open grate, by the side whereof, on a substantial ottoman, when everybody had been helped to coffee, was placed Mrs. Fox herself, in her snowy cap and clean check apron, placed there compulsorily, and as well supplied as the rest, by Inez herself, with one of the junior foxes, pretty little Maggie, crouching close into the folds of her gown, and quite too much awestruck with the grandeur of the scene to enjoy the cakes which Inez fed her with from time to time. By Jupiter, yes! I remember it so well now. Inez brought out an old guitar, the tuning whereof was a work of more labor than love. She sang to us some pleasing songs, first in English, and then, as the evening wore on, and she sang better, in Spanish. And when Mrs. Fox, burthened with the fragments of the feast, quite a stock of delicacies for her, took her departure, we sat and listened, and listened. Inez had not a voice of much power, but there was deep feeling in her songs and in her way of performing them. They were plaintive without being melancholy. The night was by no means extremely late when we left. Somewhat to my surprise, and far more to my gratification, my quondam friend Smith departed with me. "Why," said I, as he took his hat and went forth into the passageway at the same time, "why, I supposed you were to stay. That is, I didn't know you were going with me now." I no sooner uttered the words than I felt that I had made an unfortunate slip. Smith colored and twirled his little whisker. Not at present, I think." Inez darted her keen eyesight from his face to mine. Doubtless with woman's intuition she divined the real truth. There was a pause, for a moment, and I felt a little apprehensive that the hot-blooded Spaniard was going to give us a taste of her temper. But she didn't. She laughed gaily, and then with more deliberation than usual, she said, looking me in the face, Of all supposings in the world! You could not have supposed anything more absurd. You will learn that to a certainty, one of these days, for I hope you will come and see me again when I send for you. For we have had a pleasant evening, and I like you. Good night. Good night, Smith." And she quickly turned, went in, and locked the door, without waiting for another word. Said the bank clerk, as we walked homeward. "Devilish girl for joking. How well she carried off that last one." I had never before heard anything from Smith involving such a deep process of thought as this way of getting over that dash of cold water. That was Chapter 8 of Life and Adventures of Jack Engle, an Autobiography, in which the reader will find some familiar characters, by Walt Whitman. Read by Frank Blissett.